Welcome to Tropic Topics. Unfortunately, we're doing multiple topics in a row on several straight days. That literally means that there's tropical activity going to impact our area. So unfortunately for us, we are going to see impacts, and we do have watches and warnings getting posted as we speak. Tropical storm warnings out now for Liberty and Franklin County. Here's a hurricane watch for the Franklin County coastal areas. So that is right along the coastline, even Sound side, back down towards St. George Island and including Alligator Point. That is where the highest potential impact to our area will be. Outside of that, there's going to be a really tight gradient, so shifts matter in the track of this actual system. I'm still concerned. I know the models, will get to this in just a second. The models have shifted slightly north today, not really west, based on the impact track. Really, it gives a west impression, but it's more of a north trend than anything. So with that, I'm still concerned that we could see a sharper east turn for those along the peninsula. So that is not out of the question, even with what appears to be a northerly trend on the overall track. So it really hasn't changed impacts to our area yet, but it is going to be a close shave, especially for Franklin County. And because we are on the western side, it is a very tight gradient between who sees impacts and who literally sees nothing. And to just start it off, we'll start right there. If you're watching from Walton County, if you're watching from Holmes County, if you're watching Washington County, really even much of Jackson County, you're not going to see much here. Bay County, it's going to be split between eastern and western half. Eastern half will have a little more rain than the western half, but we're not going to see much in Bay County either. Unless there's a dramatic shift to the west and this makes landfall toward southern Gulf County, which seems unlikely at this point in time. Still possible, but unlikely. If it were to make that, we would see our impacts increase, but it still is going to be a tight gradient on the western side because this is going to be rubbing noses with a frontal boundary. So the gradient on the western side is going to be extremely dramatic, and you can even see that in the watches and warnings. So we'll jump right in here. As we look at our watches and warnings, we got the hurricane watch across Franklin County and a tropical storm warnings across two of our counties as well. So looking at Idalia, yes, it's an E, not an I, Idalia. That's how it's spelled. That's how it's pronounced. It has rapidly deepened over the last 24 hours, which is never good news. That means the intensity forecast has gone up. A major hurricane is in the forecast, and I say this all the time. Major means major. Do not play around. It doesn't matter. 3, 4, 5. Major is called major because it's going to cause major impacts. Doesn't matter, 3, 4, and 5. The difference between devastation and catastrophe is extremely minor. So major, you want to prepare for a major. Doesn't matter. I don't care what the category is. 3, 4, 5, at that point in time, who cares? So that's where we're at. This is going to be a major hurricane making landfall, most likely in the Bend. Actually, I would say 98% positive at this point in time. It will be in the Bend. The question is, how far east in the Bend, how far west in the Bend? It could be anywhere between, it could make landfall Alligator Point. That still seems like a possible probability. It could make landfall much, much closer to Tampa. It just depends on how hard it turns. I will say this, as we look at the guidance here, we'll put the cone out. So this is the latest with the satellite imagery. It's nearing hurricane strength. It only has a couple miles per hour to go. So don't be surprised if this evening's update you find that it is a hurricane at that point in time. The official forecast still takes it in. You'll note that all of the hurricane tracks now are on the west side of guidance, with the exception to just a couple of different hurricane models there. So I wouldn't be surprised, again, if you see a north and west trend in the next update from the Hurricane Center, which will come in here fairly soon, probably in the next hour or so. Definitely in the next 2 hours, we'll likely see that shift. But again, you'll know even with that western trend or north trend as it is, it's still not in the panhandle. So we still don't have any lines going across Franklin or Gulf counties. This is still pretty much centered in the Bend, and that's where it's been over the entirety of all of these wiper effects, shifts back and forth. It's been in the Bend every single time. So there's really no question at this point in time of where this is going. So if you're in Bay County and you still think a hurricane is going to hit us in Bay County, it's not. It's going to be to our east. So it's still possible that we have hurricane-type conditions or even hurricane working into or very near Franklin County, as you'll get ready to see with the modeling and the latest modeling showing a very, very close shape. That's why I have been echoing, if you're in Southern Gulf, so the area of the county in Gulf that points south or southwest. So that's Indian Pass out to Cape San Blas before you turn up the Port St. Joe Peninsula. All of those areas should be ready for a hurricane. St. George Island should be ready for a hurricane, should be ready for a major hurricane. Alligator Point, definitely. Everyone on Alligator Point, if I were you, no chance I'd stay. Not a chance. If I was out in Alligator Point, I'd be taking a little drive off to the west. I'd be coming to visit Port St. Joe. I'd be going to Panama City. I'd be going north and west to Mariana. I'd be going somewhere that's not Alligator Point. And on St. George Island, there's no reason for you to ride it out on St. George Island. None. Absolutely zero. So don't do that. I know it's going to be off to the east, and it will likely stay to the east of those counties. But if there is even a slight westward wobble, or this does end up on the western side of the periphery of guidance, then you don't want to be around. I promise you, you don't want to be in the eye wall of this storm. That is not where you want to be. So St. George Island, Alligator Point, I would not be hanging out. It would not be happening. Inland, Carabel, those areas, I might wait another day to make that decision, just depending on shifts. If we see a big shift to the east, on the east side of this guidance, still possible. I'm telling you, I know the hurricane models have trended north today, but I'm telling you, there could still be an eastward shift because the bias has been west. The bias in all of the model runs has been west, as we're getting ready to see right here, even including currently the bias is west. So the hurricane models all came in west. And where is the storm? Oh, it's on the east side of the entire ensemble guidance. So it's already gotten the first 4 hours wrong on the west side of the guidance. So I don't know why there has been a westward bias in the models, but there's been a westward bias in the models. We saw it last year. It's something that's weird with this obscure angle with the peninsula and how it interacts. I don't know why we get this westward bias, but we do. And that's what we still have. So I will be watching the trend over the next 24 hours to see if the system continues to stay on the west side of the guidance, or rather on the east side of the guidance. But the guidance continues to be on the west side bias. And we've seen this shift east, 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 east with the storm, thanks to the guidance being incorrectly on the western side. So not sure if that's what's going on here today, or if something else is going on. We do have the hurricane hunters putting in new data, so it's ingesting that data as well. Maybe that data is messing with something. I don't know. But the storm continues to be on the east side of the west bias guidance. I don't know why. I'm just telling you what I'm observing and what I'm seeing, and that's what I'm seeing. That doesn't mean that these westerly tracks that are much closer to Franklin County are wrong. It just means that we keep seeing the storm end up on the east side of all of these lines. That's just what keeps happening. So as we remove the cone and we bring the lines in just by themselves, you'll see that the National Hurricane Center agrees with this westward bias, and they are pretty much sticking with the Euro and the Eastern lines. They're much more in line. They're actually that black line right there next to where the Euro 12Z came in. The G is the GFS. It has been on the western side of guidance the entire time as well. Right now, I think the GFS is a lost dog. It could just be ignored. The GFS has absolutely been awful with this storm. It has not even been remotely close to reality or understanding what's going on. So the only redemption here for the GFS is if this storm actually ends up on the western side of all this guidance ensemble and makes landfall in Alligator Point, which seems like a low possibility at this moment in time. With that said, conventional guidance and conventional thought would say between the operational models, which is the E and the D there, is probably the most likely outcome, which is where most of the hurricane models went. So makes sense. I would say this probably ends up making landfall somewhere just slightly to the east of Perry would be my guess. So south and east of Perry on the coast. That would be my guess of where this is going to end up making landfall. But again, I'm not going to be shocked by a sharp right-hand turn some point in time as this starts to work its way up the coast. Most of that has to do with just friction effect. As the storm gets close to land, it starts to feel the friction effect of the land and helps to pull it east. There's no land on the west side of this storm until it gets up into the bend, so there's no reason for it to be pulled west. There's a lot of reason for it to be pulled east, just depending on how close it works on the peninsula. So that is something to keep in mind, especially if you're, say, down around Cedar Key, Spring Hill, back to the north side of Tampa. All of those areas, I would be absolutely ready for this storm to come into those areas, because it is very possible it takes a harder turn and makes that right hand. So please be watching out if you're in those areas. This is our future winds, and you'll note just how sharp of a gradient is here. So as we go to 6 a.m. on Wednesday, you'll see that the wind speeds were out toward Alligator Point and then back toward Port St. Joe and Panama City. Not a whole lot going on, but as we ramp things up as it gets really close, you see all of the winds going in there to just on the east side of Perry, and we see 40, maybe 50 mile per hour winds working Alligator Point, St. George Island. But in Panama City, the winds never really get above 30. And that's what I expect here. That's how the storm, I believe, will go. The biggest issue with this storm will probably be storm surge and storm surge potential out of this. Wherever it makes landfall, we're probably going to see a localized maximum around 14, 15 feet. But we could probably see on the east side of this storm, Crystal River, Spring Hill, back to Tampa, maybe add 3 or 4 feet to all of that. It's possible that the storm surge forecast here is a little underdone. So that's where we could. We're on the western side of this, and even in Franklin County, you will initially see storm surge, but you will likely see a negative surge as the storm passes just off to the east. So you'll actually see the water being pulled out. So the storm surge potential really starts to go up once you get to Alligator Point and then through the bend there towards St. Mark's. And then we should see on the east side of the circulation where the highest storm surge is going to happen. The Emerald Coast, Cape San Blas, all the way Okaloosa County, Walton County, Bay County, you're going to have negative surge. We'll have a little bit of water rise as the storm's coming in as we go through the day tomorrow. But as we go through the day on Wednesday, we're actually going to see the water recede. You'll see the water getting pushed out of the bays. And same thing, it'll look like a low tide all day long on Wednesday. That's going to be thanks to that north and northeast wind. It's going to be pushing the water out. So we don't have a storm surge concern along the Emerald Coastline. Indian Pass, probably 1 to 3, 2 to 4. That's probably what we're looking at there. And then as we work up toward Alligator Point, we'll see potentially up to 4, 5, maybe even 6 feet as you work up that direction, just depending on track. And shifts matter here in the track. It's going to matter not only in the rainfall potential, but it's going to matter in everything. So you'll see just how tight of a gradient I'm talking here. Western side of the eye wall probably gets stacked up, and thanks to the frontal boundary that it's going to be bumped up against, probably produces quite a bit of rain. And that purple area is probably 8 to 12 plus inches of rain. But you'll notice Bay County, Destin, Pensacola, Defuniak Springs, from the tropical system itself, not the pop-up activity we're going to see the next 2 days, but from the tropical system itself, maybe a quarter to a half an inch of rain. In Bay County, maybe a half an inch of rain. So the closer you get to Franklin County, that's where all of the impacts are going to come in. Again, I have been echoing Southern Franklin, Southern Gulf. That's who needs to be prepared for this storm. And that's really what we're looking at here. Liberty County certainly could see tropical storm conditions back up toward Tallahassee, likely going to see tropical storm conditions. I would say it's possible in Liberty County. I'd say it's likely in Tallahassee. It's likely in Southern Liberty. It's likely in Franklin County. It's possible in Southern Gulf County. So that's where we are. Everyone else, you're probably looking at very little in the way of impact. So on the green side here, it is basically another day. Don't even worry about it. You're not going to see much at all. We see a big western shift, which is unlikely, but if we did, then all of this shifts west. So everything here shifts west if we see a big western shift. As it stands now, we'd see maybe minor impacts through portions of Bay County. That's mostly just going to be some gusty conditions Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and some occasional showers and thunderstorms that work on through. And there will be a sharp edge of the rain boundary on the western side. Somebody will have rain a good portion of the night on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and someone 2 miles to their west will not see a single drop. That's what's going to happen here. It's going to have a very, very tight gradient on the western side. So keep that in mind. Seeing questions about evacuations and things like that. To my knowledge, I'm not quite sure about Franklin County. I don't know if they've issued any evacuation orders or anything like that. But again, I will reiterate, if it were me, I would not be riding it out in Alligator Point. I would not be riding it out in St. George Island. I certainly wouldn't be out in St. George Island, just in case the eye wall ends up being over the top of St. George Island and Alligator Point. That's how close of a shave we're talking about here. It could just be miles between the eye wall and seeing basically nothing. So that's what we're talking about. The western side is going to see a very tight gradient. The eastern side is not, which is why the impacts are much more broad across the eastern side. This will be an east-loaded storm. It'll be concentric around the center of the storm, and then it will have a nice western band of rain and a very sharp cutoff to absolutely nothing. On the east side, it'll be much broader. There'll be a lot more moisture. That's where the tornado threat's going to be, all up and down the peninsula as well. But for us, it's just going to be about where the gradient is. And this is a great example of that. I posted this a couple of hours ago. This is tropical storm conditions percentage. So based on the National Hurricane Center, where their forecast stands now, this is the percent chance of seeing tropical storm conditions Tuesday night through Wednesday afternoon. So right now, they're saying there's a 60% chance of that in Alligator Point. I'd say it's probably higher than that. So Franklin, Wakulla, Leon, Gadsden, Liberty, and Gulf County could all probably see tropical storm conditions. Northwestern Liberty County, Blountstown, Bristol area, you only got a 20% chance of seeing tropical storm conditions. You're probably not going to see tropical storm conditions. Panama City, you're probably not going to see tropical storm conditions. And then back into, again, northwestern Jackson County, Holmes County, Washington County, and Walton County. There's no reason to even pay attention to this because you're seeing literally nothing. Absolutely nothing from this storm. You will see some rain showers and thunderstorms the next couple of days thanks to the trough interaction, but that's it. You're not going to have any impacts from this storm whatsoever. Washington County, northwestern Jackson, Holmes, and Walton. That includes Okaloosa, but Okaloosa isn't really in our viewing area. So, but Okaloosa too. So there you go. Since I added the counties to the east, I'll add the counties to the west. So that's where we stand right now. It really is going to come down to just the chances of any kind of shift here. So the chances it ends up on the western side of the guidance, the chances that it ends up on the eastern side of the guidance. Again, you're not going to get major shifts in the cone here. This is not going to shift all the way to Panama City. That's not happening. This could take a harder right-hand turn and work into Tampa, but note just how much closer Tampa is into the cone than Panama City is into the cone. And keep in mind that the east side of the storm is going to have much broader impacts than the west side of the storm. We're on the west side of the storm. It's the side you want to be on. So there's a much sharper delineation between who's going to see what and who doesn't. So if you're along the Franklin County coastline and you're under those hurricane watches, I would strongly consider doing my go plan, basically grabbing my go bag and moving and going somewhere else and letting the storm pass and then coming back and seeing what unfold. If you're in Gulf County, Southern Liberty County, then I'd wait another day. I certainly wouldn't take any action right now. Any shifts to the east, any harder turns to the east on this, and we're not seeing anything even in Liberty or in Franklin County. So that's what we're talking about here. This is very, very minor. It's a very, very close shave. By minor differences is what I mean, not minor storm, because this is a major storm. It should be taken very, very seriously. The forecast is for a Category 3. Everyone in the forecast cone should be prepared for a 4. You always prep for a category above forecast, always, 100%. Echoed this yesterday, 2-3 was very possible, and that's what we got in the forecast. Now a 4 is a possibility. So intensity forecasts change. Just have to pay attention. It's not an exact science. It's just the way it goes. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities between this and Michael, but it is a completely different storm. It's a completely different setup. It is a completely different track. Completely different. So yes, that's where the similarities start and end, is the origin of this storm and the rapid deepening. That's it. That's the only similarities here. So stop the comparison. I know that you've heard comparisons elsewhere. it's just nonsense. What does it matter to compare it to another storm? It doesn't. It deserves its respect and its own analysis and its own thing, because it is going to affect different people that did not go through Michael. I mean, there's a major difference between the people that went through Michael in Callaway, Springfield, Parker, Panama City, Lynn Haven, versus the individuals in Defuniak Springs that went through Hurricane Michael. Defuniak Springs, I can promise you, they didn't think much of Michael. They certainly didn't like the damage here, but it didn't matter a whole lot to them. I promise. Same thing goes for those in Tampa. Nobody in Tampa cared anything about what happened during Hurricane Michael in this area or even experienced it. So there's no way they would even know. So that's why the comparison is lunacy, because the individuals that went through Michael, they're not getting affected here. Point and simple, other than Franklin County, because Franklin County certainly did have storm surge from Hurricane Michael. So that's my point, is that you shouldn't compare storms because it's infecting different people and it's got a different setup, an entirely different path, and it's infecting a completely different area. So please, let's just stop with the comparisons. It's ridiculous. It just doesn't matter. It completely doesn't matter. So that's where we go. We'll jump to questions here. I talked a little too long yesterday, so I got into rant territory, which is where I'm headed. So I'll get back onto track here and go back into it. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, make sure to put them into the comment section wherever you may be watching from, and we'll be able to pull those up. If you're asking about spot-specific location forecasts, I'm not going to do that. It'll take us all evening to get through spot-specific locations. I just spent 23 minutes talking about the forecast for our area. If you didn't catch it, you can watch it back. So if you're just joining us now, you'll be able to watch it wherever you're watching it from. It'll still be posted there. You can watch back through all of those graphics. If you have any questions that I did not address, then throw those into the comment section and we will certainly get to them. I'm going to move this forward. I think I have another graphic here. Maybe I don't. I think that's probably the last graphic. So we'll go backwards then. And we'll jump into this. I want to get back to where we've got the cone. I wanted to see, I thought I had a graphic of the storm up as well, but maybe not. So there we go. What do we got? With storm surge, do you know where we can get sandbags yet? Lori, that's a good question. You should always go to, you can go to mypanhandle.com and you can check out our resources that we have there, or you can go to check out the emergency manager pages in any of the counties that you live in, and they should have information to address where you can find sandbags if sandbags are in fact being needed. If you're in Bay County, you don't need any sandbags. We're not going to have any flooding. We're not going to have any storm surge. So there's no reason for any sandbags. If you're in Gulf County and Franklin County, I probably would get some sandbags. It's certainly Franklin County. But even there, we're talking about 2 to 4 foot storm surge. So if 2 to 4 foot storm surge isn't going to affect you, probably not that big of a deal on the sandbags. If you're in Alligator Point, 4 to 6 foot storm surge, I would definitely be wanting to get some sandbags. So I think Franklin County is probably the only one issuing sandbags. I'd be surprised if we saw it elsewhere, maybe Liberty and Gulf County. But you can always check the emergency managers pages for that to see who has made that available and where you can find that. That's the best place to go. So I hope that helps for that question. You got any questions? What is it? Explain the possibility of a sharp right-hand turn and why the models aren't necessarily showing it. Oh, that's a good one. Nathan. I think Nathan is an avid follower of my page. I believe I've had a couple of conversations with him. So good question there. That is because the models don't put friction force into the modeling physics package. So because tropical systems happen over the water, then friction force is only going to happen at landfall. Friction force is ignored because why else would you need to have friction force in there except for at landfall? And at landfall, the storm is now changing its entire physics package anyways, because it's going to be over land where it's going to have an abundance of friction anyways. So friction force is taken down or reduced in the models dramatically. This will be a very east side loaded storm, which is why I wanted to get back to the picture of the storm if I could. But most of the shower and thunderstorm activity are going to be right at the core or on the east side of the storm. And because of that, that is going to line up really efficiently with the peninsula of Florida. And because of that, you'll see the potential to be pulled to the east. And that could be part of the reason why we're seeing slight east shift, even in current storm location. It could be Cuba currently acting as that friction force and pulling it slightly to the east. You also note Franklin in the picture there off on the between the peninsula and Bermuda. It is now a Category 4 hurricane. It is absolutely thumping. The deepening of Franklin actually has a slight tug on Idalia as well. So that also helps to pull it east. Meanwhile, on the western side, there really isn't a whole lot to influence the western side other than the fact that we have a trough coming in. So initially, the storm is going to want to move toward that trough, but everything else is pulling it east. And then you add friction force to add a little more of an east pull. And because there's just a minor difference in where this track goes and what force is going to be pulling and enacting on it itself, that's why you see a almost due north track, because the forces are canceling out. But if you increase it on the east side, you get a more east shift. So that's why I do have that concern, is because there is the potential, just slightly higher potential, for a slightly stronger pull on the east side than on the west side. And so that's why we see that east-northeast movement, or northeast movement, or north movement. So as long as it's moving north, it becomes a bigger concern for us in Franklin and Gulf counties. As it starts to move northeast, it becomes less of a concern. And if you start to see a consistent, especially if we see it tomorrow, if we see east-northeast tomorrow, then watch out in the peninsula, because that means it is taking a much harder right-hand turn. It shouldn't be east-northeast until it's north of Tampa. It should be north or northeast until it gets to that latitude. If it is east-northeast south of Tampa, it is going to the peninsula. 100%. I don't care what the models say. That's what's going to happen, if that is what's going on. So just keep in mind that on the track, if you're one of those weather nerds like me and you're constantly looking at it and you're looking at the verification of where the storm is based on guidance as well, then that's something you could pay an attention to, just in case we do get that easterly shift. But you can see in satellite picture here where it flows, it goes. That's how the old timers used to forecast. Well, the flow is basically north-south, and if you see where all the convection is, it's basically pointing up to the bend between Tampa and Panama City. That's where all of the convection is flowing, is right up into the bend. So where it flows, it goes. Don't doubt the old timers. They knew what they were doing. That's where they would have forecasted it even without the hurricane models. They wouldn't have needed it. They would just looked at the clouds. They said, where it flows, it goes. We'll follow the flow. And that is where it would be heading. So certainly that possibility is there. So good question, Nathan. I hope I answered that. Good chance for I-10 to be closed from debris Wednesday. Ooh, that's a great question. I haven't even thought about that. Between Tallahassee and Jacksonville, maybe. Yeah, it could happen. That's very possible as it does come in. There might be a section there on the north side of Perry on I-10 that might get closed because of debris. That's possible. Especially if this comes in as a middle of the road 3 or even stronger, then that makes that much more likely that we get some kind of debris even all the way up to I-10. This should disintegrate pretty quickly as far as organization and wind speeds go. It's still going to be a very tight low pressure system, even working all the way up to the Carolinas, but the winds are going to drop off pretty quickly here, just based on the overall synoptic setup. So the winds should die down pretty fast. So that's good news on the overall strength of the storm, even if it does come in a major hurricane, as is forecasted. We could see this weekend as far as wind speeds pretty quickly as it does move inland. Let's hope for that anyways. This is also going to be moving really quickly. It's moving to the north at 8 miles per hour. It will probably be moving somewhere around 15, 16, 17 miles per hour as it gets closer to landfall. So this is going to be booking it. The average movement of tropical systems is probably 8 to 10, somewhere in that range. Anything under 8 is considered slow. Anything over 14 is considered fast. So this will be fast. It's going to be up over that 14 mile per hour movement. That helps out too, because that certainly does cut down on the time potential for impacts, lessening how much time you have to deal with the actual core of the system. So that is a good question there. What else do we got? Did you get another one? Um, out of abundance of caution would be the only reason I would think would happen on Wednesday would be maybe just an abundance of caution, but I would willing to bet that they're probably just following the trends and assuming that the forecast stays the same where we have very little impact in Bay County. They're probably not going to close school on Wednesday. So that would be my guess. I haven't talked to anyone in at the district, so I don't know what they're thinking. But I'm guessing they're probably paying attention to any shifts and potential tracks and changes in the track. But as the forecast stands right now, Bay County is going to see very little. And even a shift to the west, where this is more of an impactful storm into Franklin County, still really doesn't bring all that much in the way of impacts into our area, mainly just because of just how sharp this delineation between who's seeing impacts and who's not is going to be. I don't know where this question keeps popping up from, but I've gotten it quite a bit. Could Franklin and Idalia merge? I don't know why people keep asking those questions, but the answer is no. What happens when two low pressure systems get close together, it's pretty interesting. It's actually called a Fujiwara effect. It's named after the individual that figured this out, but these two pieces of energy don't actually merge. What happens is they rotate around each other. So that's part of what's going on here is that Idalia is rotating around the trough and it's rotating around Franklin. So again, those two forces canceling each other out because one wants to pull it up to the north and west, one wants to pull it up to the north and east, and you cancel those out. What do you get? North track. What movement is it going? North. So we're canceling out forces. That's why it's hard for it to shift west. It's hard for it to shift east, but there's a slightly higher east advantage because the front is moving west to east. So that's pushing it that way. So there's slightly higher advantage there. That's why this should be a northeast track eventually, and then east-northeast as it starts to get that bigger pull and the cold front starts to push it that direction. So that's the reason why you're getting the steering current that you're getting. So good question on that one. Maybe not a good question on the merge, but certainly an interesting one anyways. The Fujiwara effect. So eventually, as they rotate around each other, one low pressure system gives up and the stronger storm takes over and it just absorbs. So they don't really merge. It's not like you get two areas of low pressure that just amplify each other. That didn't really happen. You just get one that kills the other one. Basically, big brother takes down little brother and then just rules the day. Like that's what happens with the two areas of low pressure. They rotate around each other and then one wins the fight and it keeps on chugging. The other one's gone. So no, you don't really, it's not like wave amplification or anything like that. There's nothing major on that side. North Carolina, I think I've got a question from North Carolina. If you're in North Carolina on the coastal areas, South Carolina as well, along the Carolina coastline, even down to the Georgia coastline, your main issues are going to be slight storm surge and flooding rain. You just saw that narrow band on the western side, potentially 8 to 12 inches of rain. That could happen in a very short period of time. So flash flooding along the Carolina coastline and even the Georgia coastline, that is going to be the concern there. For the Georgia coastline, it's going to be the shape of the coastline helping to enhance a little bit of onshore flow and storm surge there, as well as the potential for flash flooding. That extends from basically the bend all the way up toward, say, Savannah, Jekyll Island, back toward Charleston, those areas, that if you just draw an imaginary straight line, that's where the concern for flash flooding is going to be the highest. So good question there from the Carolinas. I like that. And I know everybody wants rain. I think I showed the forecast for the rainfall totals. We should, in general, over the next 3 days, see between about 1 to 3 inches of rain across our area, with the exception being Franklin County, which could see much, much higher amounts. But there's going to be a sharp cutoff, again, on the western side. If you don't get shower and thunderstorm activity today, and then you don't get shower and thunderstorm activity tomorrow as this is starting to push moisture in, especially along that cold front, and you probably aren't going to get any rain from this. Sorry. It's just the way it goes. I'd rather it be that way than us be dealing with this storm. I'd rather us be on the western side and just not see all that much in the way of precipitation than us to have to deal with this storm to get the rain. So we will have some rain around, probably a general 1 to 3 with isolated amounts of 4 inches of rain across the panhandle, higher amounts as you get toward Franklin County. That's where we stand right now. We're going to have some rain. The good news out of all of this, because there is very little good news when you're talking about a tropical system, and this will come as very good news for most people across the Southeast. We have killed the heat dome. It's gone. It's crushed. We absolutely destroyed it. So unfortunately, that means we're continuing with tropical activity, but it does mean that our temperatures through the rest of this week, after the frontal boundary works on through, will be much closer to normal. So that is the good news, is that we are going to be much, much, much closer to what our average weather is after this storm passes, and really as the cold front works on through. So for much of the area, this is going to just be something we watch go by. For Franklin County, this is something that could be impactful. It could be majorly impactful. It just depends on exact track. Hopefully, this ends up being a close shave and the eye wall stays away from Franklin County. That's the hope here. Don't know. I can't tell you exactly. Wish I could. Can't. It's going to end up in the Bend. It's not coming to Bay County. It's not going to Gulf County. It could end up in Franklin County if it ends up on the western side of guidance. That would increase impacts across the rest of the area, but only slightly. So we're not going to see major changes in the forecast unless there's a major shift in the track. And so far today, we've had a slight north trend, but we haven't seen anything. We haven't really seen a whole lot of west trend. We've seen a north trend, meaning that it's ignoring the turn. It's just going more straight. But it is on the east side of guidance right now, so that's what we'll continue to watch. I'll continue to post updates for you as we go throughout the rest of the day. Make sure you do pay attention to the newscast today as well, 5, 6, and 10. You can find out the latest information on that as well. I'll continue to post updates as the new model runs do come in. We don't really have a whole lot of new model runs come in until about 8 o'clock this evening. That's when we'll have the full suite already done. That's because the GFS comes in at 5, and then the Euro 18Z doesn't come in until about 8 o'clock when that gets finished up. So probably won't do a tropical update until then. I will post my forecast from the newscast that will get posted before, and then we'll do it. Then I'll have another tropical update. You can always find out the latest. We'll keep the cone and everything posted on mypanhandle.com. If you don't have the Storm Track 13 app, you can download that. It comes in handy not only for tropical activity, and yeah, if you click on the radar and you go to the settings, you can turn on tropical maps, which means you'll be able to see all of the hurricane models in that area. So you can track the hurricane models and the latest runs of them and where they're projected to go right on your phone, right on the app. It's possible you can do that. You can also turn on the cone on your app. So you can see the cone, you can see the hurricane models. Both of those are available on the radar portion of the app. So everything I've shown you here, almost all of these products are available on the app. You just have to do a little digging and searching to find them. But that is a great tool to use, especially as we get closer to the event and we may end up having to push out information. You want to have all of the apps and you can handy. Pay attention to the emergency managers. If emergency managers tell you to leave Franklin County, I'm talking to you. If emergency managers tell you to leave, if you are posted under emergency or mandatory evacuations, do not stay. Do not stay. I don't care that I'm telling you it could end up off to the east. Mandatory is mandatory. That means mandatory. If you stay, you are on your own. That's what you're doing. I know a lot of people have plenty of hubris and they go, I'm fine on my own. No, you're not. You have a medical emergency. You have anything happen during the storm. No one's coming. No one. Absolutely no one. So if you are placed under a mandatory evacuation, heed those orders. I'm talking to Franklin County and I'm talking to everybody else here that could be impacted by the storm. Do I think evacuation orders are going to be issued anywhere outside of Franklin County in our area? No. No, I do not. But like I said, if you are watching this and you're along the peninsula, you're along the Bend, and you think, I'll wait it out, it'll be fine, don't. Just don't. Just don't. Let's all save lives here, people. And this is a preventable death. You are getting 2.5 days of warning here. Really 3 days of warning. Really 4 days of warning, because the track hasn't changed from the Bend since we started talking about this. It's been going to the Bend since the very beginning. So you've had several days of warning. You're getting warning now. Let's save lives. If you're not there and the storm doesn't impact you, guess what's not going to happen? Or at least the chances are going to go down. Your death chances go down if you're not in the storm. Just the way it goes. And unfortunately, tropical activity, this is why I hate tropics and why I even hate those people that wish for tropics even more. Someone will die in this. Don't let it be you. Someone will be killed from this storm. Don't let it be you. Don't be a statistic. There's no other way to put it. Every tropical system kills somebody. I know that's morbid. I know that's scary. I know that's not fun to talk about, but it's the truth. Every tropical system that makes landfall kills somebody. Don't let it be you. Be smart. Make the right decisions. Keep up with the latest forecasts. If you're watching this, you're already doing the right thing. Make sure you got your preparations done. If you're in Franklin County, you got to be ready for a major hurricane, especially the coastal areas. You need to be ready for a major hurricane by nighttime tomorrow. You are out of time by nightfall tomorrow. So nighttime tomorrow, you have to have those preparations done in Franklin County. And then along the bend, you need to be doing them now. They need to be done. By Tuesday night. They got to be done. So that's where we're at for most of our area. Close shave, we're watching it go by. For Franklin County, there is the potential for major impact. As the forecast is right now, I would call it moderate impact, but certainly the potential for major impact, just minor shifts to the west. We're not talking about 50 miles. We're talking about tens of miles, not hundreds, tens. That's all it needs to shift. It's tens to be able to impact Franklin County majorly. So please be ready for this in Franklin County. Elsewhere, keep an eye on this. If we're start screaming the trends have come west, then Gulf and Liberty County, your impacts go way up, even into Calhoun County potentially as well. The rest of the area, it would take a dramatic shift to the west to impact the rest of the area. So you can breathe a little easier if you're in Bay, Washington, Holmes, Jackson, Walton. If you're anywhere else in the area, Calhoun, Liberty, Franklin, and Gulf, you need to still be on guard very, very much. Very, very much. Because those are the areas that still at least have the potential for impact. The rest of the area, very, very little in the way of potential. So that's where we are. Hopefully that's good news for some. Keep up with the latest forecasts. Things do change. They've changed over the last 4 days. They haven't changed a lot, but they've changed. We've seen the intensity forecast go up. We've seen the windshield wiper effect across the bend, but it's been to the bend. So pretty confident this is going to the bend. Again, I'm probably about 95% positive at this point. It'll probably end up somewhere around Perry. That 5% is the concern that this takes a harder turn to the right. That's where I'm at. So that's what we got. We'll do another Tropic Topics update tomorrow at 10 a.m. That'll be Kristen. She'll be here all bright and cheery. I know she's probably watching. She may have already jumped off. Maybe she's not. I don't know. But her cheery self will be here at 10 tomorrow to give you another update. And then we will do another one at 6:45-ish, 7 p.m. tomorrow. It's going to be somewhere in that. I say that because we don't get out a newscast until like 6:35, so I may not be ready until 6:45 or 7. But we will have another one tomorrow evening as well, and that will be the last basically preemptive forecast at that point in time. At that point in time, we'll be going, okay, this is the finalized forecast, and then we'll be going into our storm coverage mode from that point forward. We'll basically be saying, okay, we're in storm mode and forecasting's over. It's now nowcasting. Now we're just watching what the storm's doing. So that's what we've got as far as the schedule goes. You can always check out the latest, mypanhandle.com, our social medias, and as well as the newscast. We're going to be spending all of our attention on, this. Of course we are, because it's the most important thing right now. So that's where we'll leave it. We'll come back again. You can catch us back here again tomorrow at 10 a.m. And then we will be here again somewhere 6:30, 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. We'll do another Tropic Topics, and you can find us right in the exact same locations that you're watching from today. You'll have that there. That'll do it. Make sure you watch the 5, 6, and 10.